you will have a question on your test that looks just like this. Use the given 0 to find all of the zeros. So first of all, this will work out every single time the same way. The steps to do this, the first thing you're going to do is, number 1, you're going to write the complex zeros. Number 2, you're going to multiply them together. Multiply together. Number 3, you're going to use long division. When you do that, you will absolutely never have a remainder. If you do, you did something wrong. And then the last thing you're going to do is factor the results. And it will always be factorable. Okay? It'll quote unquote always work. So you're going to write the complex zeros, multiply them together, use long division without a remainder, and then factor every single time. We did problems like this on notes. There were some on WebAssign. You guys have seen this. This isn't new. But when you are given the 0, 4 minus 3i. I'm going to write down x equals 4 minus 3i. What else are they giving you? X equals 4 plus 3i. Okay, perfect. So how many zeros do you have right here in red? 2. How many total are there? 4. So you know right now that 2 of them are imaginary and 2 of them are real. So we've just written down the zeros. Now we're going to multiply them together. So I have to write this in a parenthesis. So guys, remember, you're going to write this in a parenthesis. This is a positive root. So when you move it over here, this becomes x minus 4 plus 3i. When you move this over here, it's going to become negative. So it becomes x minus 4 minus 3i. Every single time you move a root over, if the first number is positive, then when you move it over, the sign becomes negative in both of them. If it is a negative root, when you move it over, both the first signs are going to be positive. It's the second ones that switch. It doesn't really matter which one you make plus, which one you make minus. Just make one of them one and one of them the other. But the first sign will be the same. If it's a positive to begin with, when you move it over, it's negative, negative. If it's negative to begin with, when you move it over, it's positive, positive. So now we're going to do our shortcut. I have x minus 4, quantity squared. I have it 2 times. Then I have a minus sign. What is the second term? 3i. So I have 3i squared. Notice I put the 3i in parentheses. All right, now I'm going to just multiply. So this just says x minus 4 times x minus 4. So when you FOIL that, you get x squared minus 8x plus 16. If you're wondering where that came from, x times x is x squared. X times negative 4 is negative 4x. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. And then negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. Then you have minus. Guys, remember, this 2 goes to the 3 and to the I. So this becomes what? 9i what? Squared. What do you do when you see a squared? You cross it off and you put a plus sign. So we have now multiplied this together and we got x squared minus 8x plus 25. Okay, that was step 2. Multiply them together, correct? What is step 3? Use what? Use long division. So you're going to say, okay, we had x squared. Was it plus or minus 8x? Okay, plus 25. And you're going to divide it into this big, long polynomial. 5x to the 4th minus 22x cubed minus 27x squared plus 514x. If you want to put the plus 0, you can. Now, what did I tell you about this step in long division? When you use long division, you should get what? What did I write right here? No remainder. So if you go through this process and you come out with a remainder, you need to erase it and start over because you did something wrong. Check your signs and stuff. So here I'm going to say x squared into 5x to the fourth. X squared times what gives you 5x to the fourth? What is it? 5x squared. So I'm going to put it right here above the 27, so 5x squared. Get your subtraction ready before you multiply. What's up?
Why did you plus 0?
Just because there's no constant. You don't have to, but I just did. Oh, did I not write it? Oh, jeez. Did I just not see that? I'm sorry. Silly. Minus 200.
Would it change your answer if you didn't have the plus or plus 0? Like dollar and one?
It wouldn't work with this problem because it needed for it to work, like it has to be a specific one where it all works out nicely and pretty. You always, if it's not really needed, because when you get to the end, like if you didn't have a 0, you would be like, oh, I have to bring something down, so you would just say bring down 0 to finish it. But I just wasn't looking. I had it zoomed in so tight I didn't see it. All right, so let's multiply. What's 5x squared times x squared? 5x to the what? Fourth. Okay, what's 5x squared times negative 8? Minus 40x cubed. And what's 5x squared times 25? What's 25 times 5, guys? What's 5 quarters? Plus 125. Okay. Now before I subtract, what do I have to do? I have to distribute, 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 distribute. So what's a negative 27x squared and a negative 125x squared? Okay, so negative 152x squared. What's a negative 22x cubed and a 40x cubed? 18x cubed, okay. Thank you. And what happens with your x to the fourths? They cancel. And what do we do with 514? So plus 514x. Keep reminding yourself, I should not have a remainder. Everything should work out perfectly, so keep that in mind. First term into first term. X squared times what gives you 18x cubed? Plus 18 what? Okay, plus 18x. So get your subtraction ready. What's 18x times x squared? 18x cubed. What is 18 times negative 8? Minus 144, right? X squared. And what is 18 times 25? So plus 450. Now, before you subtract, what should you do? We're going to change the signs. We're going to distribute, 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 distribute. So what's 514 minus 450? 64x, good. What's negative 152 plus 144? What kind of 8? But it's negative, correct? Okay. Your cubes cancel out. Then what do we do with the negative 200? We bring it down. All right. Perfect. So now again, first term into first term. What x squared times what gives you negative 8x squared? Minus 8. Okay. So minus 8. Get your subtraction ready. Negative 8 times x squared is negative 8x squared. Negative 8 times negative 8x is positive 64x. Negative 220, sorry, negative 8 and positive 25 is negative 200. Guys, what's going to happen here? Everything cancels, which is exactly what we want to happen, correct? So look at your steps, okay? We use long division. There's no remainder. What's step number 4 say? Factor the result. So you have 5x squared plus 18x minus 8 equals 0. Okay, gone are the days where you guys are going to have x squared plus x minus 12 and try to factor it. I'm not going to give you anything that you guys can't handle, but this is not that horrible of a problem. If I look at this, I'm going to say A times C. What are the factors of negative 40 that multiply to give me negative 40, but add to give me 18? If you guys don't, write it down. 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10, 5 and 8. How could I possibly get an 18 when I add or subtract? 2 and 20. When you guys write it out, sometimes it's easier to see. I need it to be a positive 18, so it's x plus 20 and x minus 2. Now I'm going to do what? Since my a term is not 1, what am I going to do? Divide by 5. So the last thing I'm going to say is x plus 4 and 5x minus 2. Set it equal to 0. So now what am I going to do with each piece? Set it equal to? So x equals negative 4 and x equals 2/5. Okay? Every single time this problem will work out exactly like this. You just have to do the steps. You write the complex zeros. If they give you one of them, you account for the conjugate. The second thing you do is multiply them together. The third thing you do is use long division. You will not get a remainder, and then you factor. All right, the second example, I just put this up here. I just want to bring some things to your attention. Again, look at the answers tonight and come in tomorrow and say, hey, how did you get this? Can you help me with graphing? That sort of thing. We'll go over anything you need to. But if I ask you how to find the zeros, where do you look to find the zeros? You set what equal to 0? The numerator. How do you figure out the horizontal asymptotes? What do we compare? Numerator degree to the denominator degree. Okay, these things you guys should be able to do. How do you find the wholes? You factor numerator and denominator, see what cancels out. So if you're asked a question and it says, what is the domain? Which also goes hand in hand with vertical asymptotes. Where do we look for domain? The denominator. So you're going to set the denominator equal to 0. So 4x squared plus 81 equals 0. All right, so let's go through the process of solving this. I take 81 from both sides. So I have 4x squared equals negative 81. And then I do what? Divide by 4. So you have x squared equals negative 81 over 4. And then what? How do you get x? Take the square root, okay? First of all, when you take the square root, what goes in front of your answer? Plus or minus, good. What's the square root of 81, guys? 9. What's the square root of 4? 2. What is the problem right here? What's the issue? There's a negative underneath the radical. What does that mean for your answer? It means it's imaginary. So your answer to this is not plus or minus 9 over 2. It's plus or minus 9 over 2i. All right, so if you encounter something like this, you're not going to have to graph it, but if you encounter something like this, what does that mean for your domain? All real numbers. Very good. Negative infinity to positive infinity. Why? There's nothing that you could put in for x that would make your denominator 0. If you are asked for domain or vertical asymptotes and you get an imaginary, the imaginary is not your answer. Your domain is anything. You can use whatever you want. So then what would you answer for vertical asymptotes? What are there? God bless. Are there vertical asymptotes? So what would you say? None. You would say there weren't any. All right? Don't be surprised if you see something like that. So just be aware of it. That's why I'm bringing it to your attention. All right, the last thing I'm going to go over before tomorrow is number 4 on the review. And again, I have all the answers done. I'm going to post them at lunch today so you guys can see them next period. But you guys have you have to understand the difference between irreducible over the reals and over the rationals. If it says to break down irreducible over the reals, that means you break down everything, whether it's real and pretty or real and not so pretty. What I mean by pretty, if you have x equals 7 and I say to you, do you know where, can you put your finger on 7 on the graph? Yes. If you have x equals 5 over 2, do you know where 5 over 2 is on a graph? Yes. If you have the square root of 7, do you know where the square root of 7 is on a graph? No, so that's what I mean by pretty. So over the reals means break down everything, whether it's pretty or not, but not the imaginaries. When I say break down, I mean in a parenthesis. Over the rationals means only the pretty ones. God bless you. So when you have a question like this, and all of them will factor, I promise, the first thing you do is let's factor this. What do we have in common here with 2x to the 5th, negative 10x cubed, and minus 28x? 2x, okay? If I bring out that 2x, I'm left with x to the 4th minus 5x squared minus 14, correct? Equals 0. This is a trinomial. You guys can factor this more. This is 2x. What times what is going to give you x to the 4th? X squared, good. What are the factors of negative 14 that multiply to give you negative 14 but add to give you negative 5? Minus 7 plus 2. Now at this point, you guys should be able to recognize the difference between these answers. 2x, when I set that equal to 0, do you guys agree that's going to give me 0? That means this is real and it's pretty. When I set x squared minus 7 equal to 0, do you guys agree that it's going to be real? Right? When I move 7 to the other side, awesome. But what is the square root of 7? Not pretty. No, it's not. So make sure that you guys understand that is an irrational number. And then what happens when I have x squared plus 2? What's that going to give me when I set equal to 0? An imaginary. So you guys have to be able to distinguish when to break down and what it means. If it says over the reals, you can break down x squared minus 7 more. If it says over the rationals, you can't. Because rationals means it needs to be pretty. So if you're going to solve it, finding the zeros, that's what does x equal. So you have 2x equals 0, x squared minus 7 equals 0, and x squared plus 2 equals 0. You guys with me? So this is x equals 0. When I move negative 7 over, it becomes positive. Then we take the square root, so you have plus minus root 7. When I move 2 over, it becomes negative. When I take the square root of negative 2, I have x equals plus minus I root 2. Those are your zeros right there. It's all 5 of those answers. You can write x equals 0, comma, plus minus root 7, comma, plus minus I root 2. That's fine. But how do you write your answers for irreducible over the reals versus irreducible over the rationals? All right, here's the difference. If it's real, you break down everything but the imaginaries, correct? So you would have 2x, because 2x equals 0. You would have x minus the square root of 7, x plus the square root of 7, because that's real, correct? And then you would leave x squared plus 2. You do not break that down anymore, because once you break it down, what does it become? Imaginary. If you were asked to break down over the rationals, you would write 2x is x minus root 7 or x plus root 7. Are either of those places rational, pretty? I could put my finger on the graph. No, so you leave it as x squared minus 7. Is x squared plus 2 a rational real number? No, you leave that as x squared plus 2. You have to understand what the differences are. If you had an x value of x equals 5, is that real? Is it rational? Can you take your finger and go, oh, here's 5? So that would be broken down as x minus 5, x minus 5. You have to pay attention to what? If the answer is going to give you a real pretty number, you can always break it down. If it's only going to give you a yucky irrational, you can only break it down over the reals. You have to pay attention to what the directions are saying. And then your zeros are just for all of it. What does x equal? Questions?